Killua makes a Nen vow with Nanika, taking possession of her to protect Aluka. And we will bring all the consequences of this, the relationship between Killua, Aluka, and Nanika that can change the entire future of Hunter x Hunter, what this union represents in the Hunter x Hunter universe, the implications for the characters, and for the whole story. Stay until the end because this video is insane. Already subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and activate the bell. In the Hunter x Hunter universe, the relationship between Killua, Aluka, and Nanika is one of the most enigmatic and emotional aspects of the series, a bond that goes beyond conventional family and friendship ties, involving supernatural forces, mysteries, and incalculable dangers. Aluka, initially presented as a child with eccentric and sometimes frightening behavior, carries within her an entity known as Nanika, a mysterious and powerful force that transcends traditional Nen and can grant wishes, but always at a terrible cost. Nanika, whose name literally means something or thing in Japanese, is an almost divine manifestation that acts as a guardian, but also a threat, depending on how her wishes are requested and the limits imposed by her power. From the moment he meets Aluka, Killua develops an instinctive and determined protection for her, not only as her older brother, but as someone who understands the fragilities and dangers surrounding his younger sister. Killua's gentle but extremely determined personality leads him to commit to Aluka's safety and well-being at any cost. His capacity to love and care is evidenced in decisive moments of the series when he risks everything to protect Aluka, even against threats no other character would dare to face. However, the presence of Nanika inside Aluka is an element that defies logic and understanding, because despite the fraternal love, there exists an entity of almost unlimited powers that can act independently, granting wishes and creating unforeseen consequences. The hypothesis of Killua making a Nen vow with Nanika to take possession of her is a concept that, although not directly explored in the manga, makes a lot of sense within Togashi's universe construction, considering the rules and complexities of Nen, family bonds, and established power dynamics. A Nen vow, or vow and restriction, is a technique that imposes limitations and obligations on a user to increase the power of their ability, creating a balance that reinforces the intensity and control of Nen. If Killua could make a vow with Nanika, this would imply a fusion or a very deep alliance, a connection that goes beyond simple fraternal love, and would place Killua as a direct guardian of the power and will of the entity. Practically, this could mean Killua would assume the role of mediator and controller of the wishes granted by Nanika, being able both to direct her abilities to protect Aluka and to limit the risks involved in the use of these wishes. This union would ensure that Nanika's powers are used consciously and safely, reducing the danger of deaths or terrible punishments for those who make wishes irresponsibly. Killua, being a Nen prodigy with exceptional manipulation and speed abilities, would be the best candidate for this task, as he could balance the magnitude of Nanika's power with his experience and intelligence, creating an almost impenetrable protection system around his sister. On the other hand, taking possession of Nanika would not be an act without consequences. The very nature of Nen and the rules of the series indicate that such a vow would require profound sacrifices, such as severe limitations on Killua's freedom, restrictions on his own abilities, and an irrevocable commitment that could affect his health, mind, and destiny. Nanika's power is so vast that any attempt to control it directly could put Killua at risk of being consumed by it or losing his own identity in the attempt. Moreover, the connection with Nanika could generate internal conflicts, since the entity has its own will, sometimes incomprehensible, which does not necessarily coincide with Killua's vision or common human desires. Beyond the individual consequences for Killua, taking possession of Nanika would also have repercussions on the story's balance and relationships with other characters. For example, the Hunter Association, or even darker forces within the universe, could try to exploit or eliminate this link to control or destroy Nanika's power. Killua and Aluka could become even more targeted, generating a significant increase in the risks and challenges faced by the siblings. The presence of this vow would also open possibilities for new alliances or betrayals, since the magnitude of the power involved would attract the attention of powerful enemies interested in dominating or destroying such a union. Moreover, this hypothesis would reinforce and deepen the bond between Killua and Aluka, transforming the sibling relationship into an almost symbiotic connection, where mutual protection is guaranteed by a spiritual and energetic pact. Killua would not only be the brother who protects, but also the guardian of the power residing within Aluka, responsible for balancing forces beyond normal human control. This dynamic would allow exploration of themes such as sacrifice, responsibility, the boundary between love and power, and the difficulties of carrying such a heavy burden for someone you love. The psychological aspect of this union would also be very rich for the narrative. Killua, who already faces internal battles related to his strict upbringing, his past in the Zoldyck family, and his own fears, would need to deal with the pressure of maintaining a balance between his individuality and the need to be a constant guardian for an entity that can both save and destroy. The duality between the desire for freedom and absolute commitment would create intense drama, deepening the character development and allowing the manga to explore more complex facets of Nen and human relationships. In terms of power and combat, this possession of Nanika by Killua could result in a significant amplification of the protagonist's abilities. The Nen vow could activate additional powers, perhaps giving Killua access to new techniques related to reality manipulation, wish granting, or probability control, aligned with the mysterious and omnipotent nature of Nanika. This would transform Killua into an even more formidable character, capable of facing previously unimaginable enemies, protecting Aluka with an almost divine strength. However, this transformation would also open space for dilemmas and narrative limits. The manga could explore the costs of this union, such as Killua's physical and mental wear, possible consequences of abusing the power of Nanika, and the difficulty of maintaining control over such a powerful entity. The vow could impose a sort of invisible contract, where misuse of Nanika's abilities would result in severe punishments, placing Killua before the difficult choice between saving people and preserving his own sanity.
Another important issue would be the reaction of other characters, especially Gon and the Zoldicks, upon learning of this fusion or vow. Gon, with his free spirit and fighting desire, might feel excluded or worried about the weight Killua carries, creating deep emotional tensions. The Zoldicks, with their pragmatic and often cold view, might question the viability and safety of this union, increasing the complexity of family relationships and alliances within the story. Ultimately, the hypothesis of Killua making a Nen vow with Nanika to protect Alluka is a rich idea, full of narrative, emotional, and strategic potential within the Hunter x Hunter universe. It fits perfectly into the mythology of the work, respecting its rules and expanding understanding of Nen's capacities and limits, while deepening the character of those involved. This union could represent the pinnacle of the fraternal relationship between Killua and Alluka, transforming them into an indivisible force capable of challenging the world's most terrible threats and exploring the deepest secrets of the vital energy permeating the series. In summary, this possibility, besides being fascinating, is coherent with Togashi's world-building, opening doors to a series of epic and emotional events that would enrich the manga. By balancing power, sacrifice, and love, the narrative would find fertile ground to evolve, creating new challenges and overcomes for its most beloved characters while expanding the mysteries that make Hunter x Hunter such a unique and beloved work. The idea of Killua making a Nen vow with Nanika and taking possession of her has some conceptual similarities with what happens with Nen beasts, but also important differences. Nen beasts, like those awakened by the princes of Kakin, are Nen manifestations that have an almost autonomous form and powers, created or summoned from the user's aura, and function with specific rules and contracts, generally requiring a restriction or vow to maintain their power and control. In Nanika's case, although she is a mysterious entity with powers that go beyond traditional Nen, the relationship would be even more intimate and complex. Nanika is not a simple manifestation of Alluka's Nen, but rather an almost divine force inhabiting her body, capable of granting wishes with real and often dramatic effects, going beyond what Nen beasts normally do. If Killua made a Nen vow to control or take possession of Nanika, this could be seen as a pact to manage a much greater and more volatile force than a common beast. He would not just be summoning a creature, but establishing a direct connection with a powerful entity that demands balance, control, and sacrifices to avoid catastrophic consequences. Thus, the idea would be similar in the sense that power requires a vow, a restriction, and a strong bond, but Nanika would have a dimension of power and emotional complexity much greater, involving not only strength, but also protection, love, and existential risks for Killua and Alluka.